Okay, so welcome back. This is the Ethics of Sources, Day 6, and today I'm going to be talking about sound. And as Dion just pointed out, today is actually Helen Keller Day, which I hadn't realised, so it's probably a good thing to do. So, before I start, I'm just going to say this. Anybody who's just joined, some of the videos I'm going to be playing in this presentation may seem harsh or painful to your hearing, especially through headphones. So be careful to lower the volume when you're listening when I'm playing back the video, just so you know. Okay, so Day 6, sound, making broken sounds for broken files. So when I say sound, I mean sound. I'm not a musician, and the sound that I use in my work, I don't consider to be music as such. It's more a product of the processes and manipulations that I put the files and codecs through. I make broken sounds to reflect a broken file and a broken narrative. So before I made glitch art, I'd made a video. I worked for a long time on an animated film based on my sister Rowena's paintings, which was called Colour Keeper. Now, that was back in 2006, 2007. Back then, I took a bunch of songs that I liked. Obviously, they were by recording artists. And I chopped them into the video in a way which suited the emotional narrative of the film that I was making. And Rowena's paintings reflected our childhood, and so did the songs. But unfortunately, at the time, now I was on MySpace then, before YouTube, and MySpace didn't take kindly to this use without permission, and decided to pull my video and put me in what they called copyright jail. So I had to prove I was a good person and I'd learned all about copyright and I wouldn't do it again. So MySpace really hates me, but I could put it on YouTube. YouTube loves me. Yeah, not so much. So I could actually see MySpace's point, and I pulled the video, and that only exists now as a ghost file sitting on a backup DVD somewhere. So I learned that lesson. So for the next version of that animation, I used the sound of an old musical box that I found at a junk sale somewhere. I recorded that with a microphone, re-edited it with Audacity, then stretched and re-edited and did some strange things with the power of an open source sound editor. And then I uploaded that to YouTube, thinking that the Wild West that it was then, which is roughly around 2010, surely it would be fine. No. A few hours later, the video had a copyright claim against it for the soundtrack, even though it was based on a musical box that I'd sampled. So that was bizarre. And as that was, I did think, well, shall I contest this? And in the end, I just couldn't be bothered. So I took that down. And between those two takedowns, lesson number 2 was learned. Now, the third version was right at the beginning of me making glitch art, which is about 2012, 2013, and was the first time that I'd really thought about what the sound could be like. I'd begun experimenting with listening to the sound that a video made when you put it into Audacity, which was much to the disgust of our dogs, because every time I put one of these files into Audacity, the sound it made just ended up with them all barking in the background and going off on one. So this one, eventually it sounded a bit like a monster lurking in a basement chewing on bones, and it sounded a little like this. Now we'll just see if this is actually going to work now. Where are we? Okay, so this is the actual film. Actually, oh, it's going to allow me to share today. Oh, excellent. Now, So there's a film that eventually got called Glitch Keeper. No, we've just leaped ahead there, haven't we? Oh no, that's all right, yeah. So as you can see, the sound is very kind of glitchy, and it kind of reflects the video that it is. I think it's actually the sound of the video played back in Audacity, then played about with a bit. So that kind of worked pretty well. I'm going to stop sharing that now. It's up on YouTube, so if you wanted to later on, you could search it out just to... So this is the one that got me strike 3, and eventually I just couldn't be bothered anymore just putting any kind of sound on anything. So this happened with this video, and I'd made this just before the actual video I just showed you, and this had been subject to another takedown because I'd used Iggy Pop's Nightclubbing as a backdrop, and I'd taken Nightclubbing, taken a small sample of the strange and boozy reverby drums, looped that, and so that got a copyright takedown notice, even though it's a tiny little sample. So obviously the bots on YouTube are very sensitive. Now this one, I will warn you, the video I'm about to play back is quite loud as well. So turn down your headphones if I haven't already warned you to do that. Just find that here. So this was strike 3. If I can actually get the thing to sample. Ah, there we go. So say this is strike 3. So all these copyright takedowns kind of colored my approach to sound as well. So after that, I went a bit extreme, and I thought, let the bots chew on this. So this is where I discovered that a broken file can generate its own sound. So one of the things I find fascinating about glitch art is that some techniques can have unintended consequences. So this file, when I originally made it before hex editing, had no sound. And somehow in the process of hex editing it, it generated the sound that you hear in the background. But the sound does actually seem to reflect what the video is doing. Now this is the last really extreme one, so I'll just cue that up and play it. So, okay, not that one. So the sound on the next video is a combination of taking the sound from original video source and reworking them with Audacity. And then I got the transcript from that day. The day is actually 9/11. So on 9/11, there were all sorts of pager transmissions, and there was a dump of those put onto WikiLeaks at some point. I downloaded those as a text file, and I put them through a command line text-to-speech software called Festival. And then reversing some of the original audio on top of that. So speech synthesis actually fascinates me in that you can take anything that is text and turn it into a sound. Now this video is actually 2 DVD players played against each other through a dirty mixer based on Carl Klomp's design, which we can find here. Search for that. Now I'll play you a bit of this video and you'll get an idea of roughly what that sounds like. Yeah. So this is 10 minutes long. We'll actually play that, but all the way through. There's one section, I think it's around 40, yeah, around here, which is most obvious. I'm hoping that's the sound. So just, yeah.
Going in. So again, Don, a jet screaming that low could be consistent with what you heard.
Absolutely, it could be consistent with what I heard. What I know, I did not.
So just in the background of that, you can hear the text that's actually been read in through the speech synthesis program, reversing against the voices of the broadcasters on that day. So getting back to speech synthesis, which is kind of like, I really enjoy it, we could use this, if the slides are in the right order. Yeah, so that was done using a program called Festival Speech Synthesis. But now I use this program called GSpeaker, and to do this. So first of all, what I'm going to do is turn a video file into text with this command. So this is our old friend XXD again. So XXD minus P, the video file or whatever file you want to put through there, redirected to the file hitch-a-text. So it comes out as a hexadecimal stream, which is basically just numbers and letters. And then I'm going to turn the text into sound. So taking speech synthesis a bit further, we could use a GUI application, as I say, like GSpeaker. Now, GSpeaker is a GUI front end for a program called eSpeak. So it's also command line as well. So here I'm streaming the contents of the file hitcher16bit.mp4 using XXD to a text file, and then opening that text file in GSpeaker and looking at various ways of playing it back in either male or female or different speeds and pitches. So I've got a video of that actually happening. Let's see. Okay, so this is me on the desktop, just doing what I've just described I'm doing. So I'm just opening up a command terminal and typing in that command. And I spelt it wrong the first time, so. Yeah, so there we go. You can see the text is actually there. And I have to go back and spell it correctly. Just let's run. So then we'll open that up in text editor. Now you can see there what that file actually looks like as hexadecimal. I'll just take a small chunk of that, just copy and paste it into, this is GSpeaker working now. Dump that in there.
00020674797.
Yeah, I haven't got the language packs in yet. But you basically get the idea. You can take anything, turn it into text, and feed it into GSpeaker. And that's actually what I used in the next video. And here, I use a text about Derrida, and then play with that in Audacity at different speeds. So in some sense, it misinterprets text as sound. Pitches, so the squealing is the same, speeded up greatly with a number of effects on top of that. I'll just play that now. Play all of this. But you get the general idea from that. So to take that a bit further, what I did was I took a HTML text, put that into a speech, into GSpeaker, and played around with that a lot further. And that's this next video. So you get the general idea from the repetition of the percent. I love that. It's great. So following on from that, and more important for me sound-wise was the discovery of an application called The Voice, which in essence is a piece of software designed to teach the blind to see by using a form of radar that changes what a webcam sees into sound. So the application which created the video element base of the previous video was actually The Voice. So as well as being able to use a webcam as input, it can also use the desktop itself and sound out and view what you point the mouse at. So in this case, I'm using the desktop as a feedback loop to create the sound that you're actually hearing and seeing. So I'll just cue that up. And the sound. That's actually probably one of my most favorite things that I've ever actually made. So sometimes if you get the sound just right with that application, you can achieve some beautiful organ-like bell tones. And I'll just play this one, which is made with voice again. Interestingly, going back to my research into old operating systems, I actually had that working on Windows 95 because it's a really old application program. And yeah, and Windows ME, I use that as well. So this is just a slightly different kind of take on. So this is actually, I think, this is the Windows 95 Maze screensaver. So the screen is looking at this, the program's looking at this as its input and creating the sound from that as well as the video as well. That's 5 minutes long, I'm not going to play all of that. But I like that because in a way it's kind of a lot softer than the previous one. There's something rounder about that. So as well as turning sound into video, we can also turn... Oh yeah, okay, we're confusing myself. So as well as turning video into sound, we can also turn sound into video. And it's quite an interesting exercise. So basically you can take any WAV file, change the file extension to .yuv, open a terminal in the folder that contains the WAV file, and enter this command. Now, I'm not even going to try and say that because it's just too much. So basically all that does is, as I say, it takes the sound file, turns it into video with the the things I've just outlined there. So I'll just cue the video that I made today of that being done. So this is the whole process in action. You should be able to see what I'm actually doing as I go along in that. Again, I'm not going to speak over this because the broadband issues I'm having today, it will make everything go weird. Or maybe a little bit because you need to know what's going on. So just opening a terminal there. Typing in that command. Right, change the extension on the file to YUV from WAV. Back to the terminal. Run the command. You can see now we've got our file called output MP4 there. And we're going to play that. We'll play it on a loop. So obviously that's a very basic example of what you could do, but it does hold possibilities. For example, you could turn a video into sound as a WAV, then maybe add effect like reverb, etc., then turn that sound back into video and so on and so forth in a loop. It's a kind of sonification which is actually a common technique in glitch art, but not one that I use much myself. There's actually people who do it way better than I could ever try and do it. And then there is the sound that happens in the process. So my favorite format for this, where if you hex edit or data mosh a file, certain codecs react interestingly, but Magic YUV, which is in some of the newer FMPEG releases, say 4 series and upwards, it works just way better. So yeah, so I'll just cue that one up now. Okay. One's called Eat Your Greens.
They have vitamin C, include orange juice, melons, and old orange.
Yeah.
They have vitamin C, include orange juice, melons, and old orange. Third vegetables like tomatoes, you should have vitamin C food every day, provided stored in the lawn. The fruity dessert, wonderful fruits like apples, pears, and ears, which contain vitamins and minerals. Things about your first and on all food health and not one food. Sure, source of pep. Not because of who they eat, but because they sum up all kinds of food for its fingers to point the way. And Ralph goes for them every day. Eat bread, butter, meat, eggs, vegetables, even any sweet substitute for other foods. Sweets don't have the protein.
There's something that's very particular about the way the Magic YUV breaks when you hex edit it, that it's just the snaps in it I really like. So after that, so a skipping CD is a happy CD. So the use of glitch in music probably predates visual glitch art. and our very first experience of glitch may be the sound of a skipping CD. In fact, whole albums have been made using this method. The most famous that I know of is by a group called Oval on their album Discount, which came out in about 1994. And they've actually influenced my approach to sound in my own work using their methodology. I basically rip and burn and mark. So I can download a video from archive.org. I'll extract the sound from the video using this command, fmpeg-i, whatever your file is, -vn, take the video out, to ripsound.wav. Now wav, because I want the highest quality at that point. I'll burn the file to a CD, mark the CD with a felt tip pen, record that playback, and then adjust the sound and edit in Audacity, and then add that to the original film. So I'll actually take the sound from the original film, glitch it, put it back in. So I use this technique especially on a lot of the black and white film noir that I source from archive.org. So for instance, in the next video, there's a really lovely piano melody, which is also joined by the sound of a knocking on a door, which repeats and repeats in a really strange and eerie way, which is probably one of my favorite sound things I've done. And it's this one. We'll cue that up again. So after that, also, I use this. Now this, I've never actually, I use this slinky little device. So mine is actually the only one I've ever actually seen in real life. As basically it came out around at the wrong time. So it's a Mad Waves Mad Player. Came out kind of early 2000s, and essentially what it does is you tell it a genre and organize a couple of beats within the interface, a few bass lines and drums from its sound banks, and then it composes on the fly a new and unique track every time you run it. It has the ability to save what you make, and it also has a handy line out and a mic in. And it's quite the strangest device I've ever used because it creates generative music. So music created by algorithm to a certain set of rules. So as a consequence of that, each track is unique, it's royalty free, and the copyright stays with you as the creator, because like you just created it on the machine, and that's the nature of generative music. Given a few algorithms, anything is possible. And it does all of this in real time. It's quite an astonishing little thing. And I've used this in some of my work as a sound accompaniment, for instance, on the next video I'll show you. Though I've messed around with it after in Audacity. I tend to leave the device running, record the output, and then pick out the bits that I like. And this is, if you listen to the sound on this one, it's fairly obvious. So, and there's also another video that I'll show you before. Yeah, and then there's this one. So, just to conclude, there's no one approach that I have to sound in my work. I tend to like broken sound or sound that fits the motion of the video. Now, there's more I could cover, but let's take some questions, shall we? Also, I'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone who came today and over the last week. I really do appreciate it. So, if you want to ask me a question in the feed, that's probably... Okay.
Ian,
Yeah.
can I drop in?
Yeah.
Cool. So while others are typing questions, I wanted to thank you. Like this day and like all the previous ones were super interesting, and we've seen a lot. I know I'm gonna spend some time on your YouTube channel to check out all the work like in full, because I feel the timing of the work is also important. Like you have to spend some time. It is time-based art, so there's like time that you need to evolve this understanding, and somehow I developed fascination with pieces, like even if they wouldn't be in a fancy gallery setting, they would be on YouTube, but you really can like develop some like closeness to the work. I love that you had a historical overview somehow of the YouTube strikes you had. Like, that's really curious to see, and I think it's really super important to share because probably lots of people have these types of strikes all of the time. Okay, so the YouTubes and MySpace and all of the services algorithms are probably changing and adapting. Sometimes they allow stuff, sometimes they allow less, but it's really good to know. And I was really surprised of the tiny sample that you used of the work by Iggy Pop in your experimental video. That getting a strike is really crazy. I think it's really a great question, like also for the future of arts, like how to regulate this, because sampling should be allowed, and it is your artistic freedom to resample other people's work. If we would translate this into visual arts terms, it would be like collage art is illegal. It's like hacking, underground theft, while as in fact it's a recognized discipline in art. So I feel digital art should have the same treatment, basically. Like, if you would upload your work, YouTube should ask you, okay, is this your art? And if you say yes, then it should have a more flexible approach to like striking copyright claims. And it's also a question. Oh, sorry.
No, go on, continue.
I wanted to ask you, do you think, or are you afraid in some way that in the future when computer vision or like any type of DRM readers or scene readers, as you call them, if their algorithms would be getting better and better, could they strike and copyright notice retroactively?
I think they already can. Retroactively?
Yeah. Like you upload an art piece in 2015 and in 2025, because their algorithms got even more better and now they understand glitch art, they say, hey, but this is like your source was this and this.
I think that glitch art is too random. I really do. I think one of the interesting aspects of glitch art is that it becomes a form of camouflage in a way as well, because it's so how do I explain it properly? The models they use to train AI are being trained on traditional things, a traditional idea of what video is, and I'm pretty sure that because video is so big as well, as opposed to sound is quite small to sample, whereas video, because it's nature, it's bigger. I'd say it's going to be very hard for them to do that. That will be my opinion. And also the fragmented nature of it. What is the AI system looking at it going to see? It's just going to, I mean, you're probably training it to become a glitch art bot itself. So yeah, I'd say they might try, but I don't think they'll succeed. Will be my attitude.
Yeah, I mean it's really exciting for me that glitch art is this kind of digital steganographic practice where you can interlace different layers and meanings and references, and a digital system can't really understand it. Like the Terminator wouldn't understand glitch art. He would be like,
no.
What is this? He would bug out if you would show him glitch art.
Yeah, I think it's AI is a function, obviously, of the biases of the people who create it, and we only have to look at the problems of visual recognition and kind of what's the best way to put it? Basically, racism. Basically, AI is racist because it's built by people who are of a certain class and a certain race, and they're not training it on, and they're also of a certain, as I say, they're a certain class, and they're not training it in an open and fair way. So their biases are automatically built into it. And I'd say the same will be any system that they use to try and track down samples that we might use video-wise. They're more interested in people pirating whole videos, I suppose. So, it's kind of an interesting area. There are implications to it, but I'm not going to discuss them in a live chat.
I wanted to mention that there's a Croatian producer, musician, and an artist who decided to tackle this topic of artistic freedom being limited by the corporate aspect in pop culture. And in popular music. So what he did is to take samples, but he really got into the legalese layer of it, and he figured out like how much of a song can I take without being able to be being sued. So he took small samples, and what was really nice that he also decided to take samples from the videos, but go into such closeness to the pixels, like to expand them as much to create this like abstract abstract art. And it was interesting because his work wouldn't like it wouldn't prompt the bots, the strike bots, the copyright strike bots.
Yeah.
But he went for the human readable layer of it and presented it as such work. So he actually got feedback from the people whose work he used.
Oh, right.
Like the feedback, I'm not sure to which extent it went, because I only have like a small fraction in time of information. But some feedback was kind of neutral, some was really negative. I mean, I like that there's a discussion about this, because normally people would say in art, good artists, good artists create and great artists steal. Is it something like that?
Picasso.
Like Picasso, he's the pinnacle of of an artist being a genius thief somehow, but in the digital, it's kind of limited and dehumanized. Yes, this was the word I was looking for.
Right.
And so I'm really curious.
It's interesting that he picked up on the idea of reducing something down so far that only kind of human eyes would actually be able to detect what it actually was. And that's fascinating. You know, if you give me a sample at 3 seconds of music, a lot of people will be able to spot what it is, or 2 seconds even. You know, but visually you can break things down very oddly, and people still be able to read it. But I'm not sure computers can. So in some ways, that's our defense against their dark art. So that's an interesting project. Yeah, that's I'm
gonna paste you all a link in the chat. So I feel maybe it would be great if it got a bit more, if subjects like this would get more attention, because a lot of times, maybe I mentioned this, but if we discuss licensing once production, and today's digital art is lots really heavily invested in the production domain, like art being an asset for somebody else to create their art from your art. And this is this digital ecosystem that we were discussing, like be it code or visuals or sound or concepts, like people are sharing more and more today. And if we would have this discussion on copyright and copyleft, lots of people, at least in the creation arts, would not really be aware of what copyleft, for example, is. How does it work? How does copyright actually work?
And Creative Commons as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it wouldn't be really clear that you can basically, I mean, you can still live off what you create, but still allow other people to have their production process and the pipeline going a bit easier. So people are not really clear how would they live, like how would I live if I would give my art away for free. So I feel we have a lot of work. So in the code aspect, there's this like for example, public code, public funding, public code. So I feel it should be the same for art. If it's public arts, and if it's publicly funded, why not have it like a commons asset?
I mean, the whole concept that I was talking about it a bit the other day, but with the Creative Commons thing, I mean, I'm not technically giving my work away for free. What I'm doing is granting everybody to have the same right to use it and reuse it as they see fit without me saying I want money for it. I'm still recognized as the originator of that thing, you know. I don't get paid for it, obviously, but I grant people the right through the Creative Commons license to use my work. And I think when you start getting into issues like this, what's good about Creative Commons is that they actually have a legal text which can be written down, and there's different degrees of that license. And that's, you know, because they've had to work it all out very carefully. And I think that's more the area maybe that needs more understanding. You know, it's granting rights to people. It's good in that sense.
Cool. Thanks for the comment. Oh, so does anybody have more questions? Not at the moment.
Everybody's gone quiet.
Yeah. So, I don't know, is there any spot that we missed that would you like to discuss? Like, I could discuss the software, but it's really clear that you're experimenting and using different types of open source or freely licensed software. I really enjoyed that you showed the G Speaker and the eSpeak thing. I didn't know it exists, and I was using the festival, but sometimes you can get lost in this like sea of software. You could use everything, but some of it is not really accessible, some of it is not free, some of it is really limited, and somehow I feel it's still the area of sound software for outside of the sound production industry. Software is still kind of developing, even though there's like a lot of older software. It's not a lot of it that you can actually create something that has artistic value, if that makes sense. So
I mean, a lot of the music people, I think, that I've talked to, they either rip the professional software through nefarious means, or they start using, there's one guy that I talked to a few years ago and introduced to a lot of the open source stuff, and he didn't even realize it was there. He was stuck on Apple Macs, basically. His name's Dan Zaras something or other. But anyway, he actually produces a lot of his own music, and it's all done using what is it? The version of Ubuntu Studio. He uses the tools actually in that, and he seems to have no problems with making professional quality music and linking. I mean, it gets into the point where you're linking up proprietary hardware as well and trying to control those, and that's another issue as well. That goes into the nature of what hardware is and how it's locked down. So that's another legal area that's kind of, you know, I think with sound especially, it's very much a minefield.
Yeah, definitely. What did I want? I wanted to ask something else, but I wanted to ask if you can introduce tomorrow's day. Like, what do we expect? How low or high should be our volume when we join?
Standard. We can test it out. We can test it out when I've got it all set up, because I have to set everything up there. But
okay, so when we meet tomorrow, then we'll test it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So shall we wrap it up then? Nobody's got anything else to say?
Yeah, we can. Should we? We can maybe stay for a short talk tomorrow after the performance.
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So before and after.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Ian. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming and listening and watching. And I do really appreciate it. Thank you very much, all of you.